Micky,
Hello.
good to meet you, my friend. I
You
met you
too.
about 10 minutes ago. But you know what? We've been speaking for a couple of weeks, two weeks or something like that. A mate of mine, Dan, he highly recommended doing this podcast. And then obviously we got on the phone. Now, you sent me over quite a few bits of information regarding what we're speaking about, but I made a conscious effort not to talk about it because I almost feel like I want to be in the same boat as everyone watching now, trying to really understand in depth what it is that you're doing. You're traveling the country, you're doing podcasts. This is something that I've personally never seen. And it's regarding your book, which we're obviously going to speak about as well. Football, the People's Shame, how to revolutionize a national sport. And yeah, I mean, when's it coming out? Just so I know.
It's out, and thanks for having me, by the way. It's out, I think it's the 2nd of December. So we've got about 6 weeks to the release. Basically, it's a look at English football fandom, all supporters, and it's a kick up the arse. It's basically saying, come on, we've got to stand up. I'm going to make this claim. I think what I've developed is the greatest political idea of the 21st century. Now, that's probably not a big, bold claim in the sense that there aren't that many. You've got to look at the country as a whole. We need new ideas. And I found a way of revolutionising English football and running it as a public service without any cost to the taxpayer. So this is my claim here, what I can tell every Chelsea fan listening. If we can make this happen, you will own Chelsea and you'll also own broadcasting. And
That's a massive thing.
It's not as
and
far-fetched
just
as you think,
initially,
mate.
I mean, that sounds like it's a really complicated process as well.
It's a huge opportunity, is what it is. My point is this, Alex. Like, I'm a sane person in an insane world, and I'm going to try and back that up. But when you look at English football rationally, which is what I've done in the book, it doesn't make any sense as it is now. You know, for me to turn around and say, I don't think Chelsea should be owned by a foreign Russian billionaire. You know, I don't think Chelsea should be owned by some American in private equity or whatever. You know, I think Chelsea should be owned by Chelsea fans. It's pretty rational. There's a way of doing this. We're going to chat about it, but in order to do it, we need to look at the wider political landscape of not just football, but also England, Britain. And we need to, look at the bigger picture, because if there's one thing that English football supporters don't do, it's think big. We think short term and we think small. We think short term in terms of weeks, days, months at most.
Especially when it comes to what happens on the pitch.
You know what? It's all about what happens on the pitch. But what's happening off the pitch, we've taken our eyes off the bigger picture here. And what's happening off the pitch is massively affecting now what's happening on the pitch. And my idea is this: we're going to think big and we're going to think long term. So that's the challenge. And if you want to change English football, well, do you know what? It's already changing fast, really fast. We can talk about it, go into a bit of detail about the monopolization process, the commercialization process, the globalization process, and also the humiliation as well that English football supporters feel. Because Chelsea's an interesting club because, in terms of the way that things have gone, you've benefited.
That's a mild way of putting
yeah,
it.
well, you've benefited massively from, this the oil money came in and it took you to, the height of Europe, and Premier League champions multiple times.
Yeah.
You've won everything. But afterwards, I'm just guessing, but I think it's quite humiliating now I think you will feel humiliated by defeat, and there's a reason for that.
Well, because of Bowley and Clear Lake coming in.
The reason is you don't stand for anything. In the olden days, if you go back to when you were winning everything, say olden days, you had Lampard, you had Terry. Terry was important because he's Chelsea boy, but that's gone now. There's no locality. Chelsea is owned by rich foreigners, and it's running the interests of rich foreigners. And you go into that stadium, Alex. It's a mate of mine gets a lot of corporate stuff in London, so he goes all the time. He says the atmosphere in there. How many Chelsea fans are in that stadium?
Yeah, I mean, when I go to
it's
Stamford
tourists,
Bridge,
mate. It is. I mean, I've been down. I say my mate does corporate stuff. He took me to Spurs, and you needed a space helmet. There's nothing. It's full of tourists, and it's the same at Chelsea. You know, you're watching on TV. How many Chelsea fans are in there?
Well, I think I know where you're going with this, and I couldn't agree more actually. Because if let's just look at Stamford Bridge for example. You've got the East Stand, the West Stand, the Shed, where half of it's the away fans and half it's home, and then you got Matthew Harding. Now, there's only two places you really hear any noise, and that's the Shed, which is 50% the away section anyway, and MHL. The problem is, though, when you try and get a little bit of atmosphere, you can't just rely on one stand. And actually, I've had games, because I like to rewatch old games from every now and then when we played Madrid in the 90s, or even if you go back 20 years, you know, fantastic atmosphere at the Bridge.
Yeah.
And the prices that fans are forced to pay to sit in Westview, for example, I know their tickets were £3,000 last season. It's gone up, you know, by £1,000 or something stupid. And I think to myself, well, if you've got money, great, whatever. At least you're supporting the club. But why are you supporting the club? And then it goes back to what you were just saying about foreigners coming in, pursuing their own interests. Now, I do think that there is certainly a debate to be had about, you know, who should buy the club and whether they're good for the club, et cetera, et cetera. But I also think that's just part of life. But what you're saying essentially is that we need to try and find a way to even it out all over, essentially like what they do in Germany, and try and have that landscape in English football.
Yeah, I think what I've come up with is if we keep the best things about the Premier League as it is, the best facets of globalization, you know, all these amazing players, these incredible world-class players, that wasn't happening before. And it's fun. It's good. We've got the highest standard of football in the world.
And that's because of these rich billionaires that come in there and spend all the money. So there's two sides to it.
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, there's no loyalty anymore in football. Money is the only loyalty. I think we can change that. But I think what we've got to do is keep these world-class stars, but also infuse a bit of locality into it. So imagine, like, going back to that Terry thing, you know, Chelsea should have a couple of Chelsea boys in there. Every team should. And that would just even things up a little bit. You've got to force clubs to look inwards, you know, not just outwards. So you've got to, you know, part of the regulation we're going to talk about later in this chat is I think every club should have 2 players that were born in certain hospitals, you know, local boys. If you did it like that, it does make it fairer and more even. If you don't produce world-class players through your academy, you've got weaknesses in your team.
A bit like what they've got in China, for example. You have to have a certain amount of Chinese players.
Yeah, they're really extreme with it, actually, aren't they? But it's a way, that could be 1 player, it could be 4. You know, it's a fluid concept. But that's the idea. So you've got to tie teams to locality, and there's a way of running football completely differently from how we're doing it now. And this is a case of opening up our imaginations and trying new political ideas. Football is not some impenetrable fortress. It's actually the weak point in this global system because people care about it, and the movement to take football is already there. It's this movement here. It's these podcasts. A lot of people, you know, every club's a really interconnected network. We're all part of the same cultural cloth here. And if we're not careful, we're going to lose it. And my argument is this, or part of my argument, the globalization and the commercialization of English football, it's affecting us. We've become bitter, reactive. You know, we're humiliated. My billionaire pays more than your billionaire. You know, there's no loyalty, there's no romance left anymore. And this we can talk about the monopolization process because it's really extreme. And if you value as a Chelsea fan, the job, there's no right or wrong way to engage with football, you know. But if you value English football in terms of like those fixtures against West Ham, or, you know, I know it rarely happens, but Millwall, you know, stuff like that, then we need to stand up now because the European Super League is 100% happening. When you look at the economics, it's really telling. And with the A22, the company that wanted to do the European Super League, what's happened here is because they've threatened the power of UEFA, and this is what you've got to do, you've got to threaten, you've got to stand and actually make a movement. If you want power, you've got to threaten, you've got to challenge the authority with your own movement. So what's happened now is that UEFA are really worried about the top 12 leaving them because they've got this Chelsea part of that. You're a worldwide club. And that's great. You know, you've got this huge fan base, and a lot of commercialism goes with that. So what's happening now is UEFA are ceding more and more advantage to the bigger clubs. You look at City with the points deduction thing and all the charges. They're not going to make it stick because they need the bigger clubs. What's happening slowly is as a European Super League is forming, and I think what's eventually going to happen is that Chelsea will be playing their B team in the Premier League, and their real team will be the European Super League.
So
It'll
you
become
think that gap is just going to get bigger and bigger?
It's really accelerating fast. I mean, we can talk about it now if you want. There's a lot of things to go through here. I mean, well, maybe we should frame it a bit differently.
We've got a lot of time, Mickey.
This is there's so much to talk about, and I'm wary about saying too much too soon because this is it's such a big concept and such a big idea.
I think the main thing is that people understand the rough idea, and then we can get into specifics.
Let's do it. But
well.
You know what? To understand the present, you've got to understand the past. So this is quite interesting, Alex, because no one knows the political journey of English football. So we all love football. We all love it, but it kind of exists under this cloak of invisibility. So what we'll do now is just briefly chat about how football went from the people's game, which what it used to be called a working class sport, into what I've dubbed as the people's shame. You know, English football supporters have been dispossessed. The English game belongs not to the English, you know. So how did that happen? And we start with the Victorian era because the Victorians are the ones that handed this down to us. They created this amazing thing, you know, which is incredible, isn't it? And I think we're throwing it away. But what the Victorians did was they realised that sport is a sport first and a business second. So it was professionalised in 1885. And then it was really popular, football. And they had to build infrastructure, stadiums. So what they did was they went, right, we want to set up as PLCs, public limited companies. So football clubs became public limited companies to de-risk it. You know, if it all went wrong, you're not liable for the debt, the company is. But the FA said, yeah, but no. So the football clubs became a hybrid. They weren't just PLCs. There was something called Rule 34. Rule 34 meant that shareholders weren't allowed to take out dividends. So you couldn't pay yourself. And if a football club was liquidated, all the money had to go to charity.
So the only way you could make money was through selling the club?
You couldn't make money.
Oh,
you couldn't make money from football clubs. They were community assets. That's what Rule 34 did. Right. If you look up on the internet, this is the internet. So I think it's got something to do with pornography, so don't type in Rule 34. Because people have looked and it's gone, that's not what it is. So yeah, but it's David Conn is a good source on this. Great football journalist. He's the one that did a lot of digging on Rule 34. Rule 34 was still in the FA handbook in the late 90s. But we'll talk about when it was bypassed. But that's what they said. They said, right, football clubs are community assets. Yeah, they can set up as PLCs, but they're tied to communities. You can't take money out. The community assets. They also had a wage cap as well, which meant, you know, everyone's...
We've been talking about that for a while.
Everyone, we have. Everyone is equal. They also had the sharing of gate receipts. So, which basically meant that bigger urban centres, you know, weren't able to dominate smaller provincial towns. And as a result of this, you had like teams like Burnley, you know, won it 3 times in the 20s. Anyone in the country could win. Wolverhampton Wanderers were a great team. Newcastle were great. Chelsea and Arsenal too came through. So it was really diverse in terms of who could win. Anyone could win. It was set up as fair. They realised sporting integrity was key. Football is a sport first and a business second. The business element's there, but it's strictly regulated, strictly controlled. Interestingly, this is how the Americans do it as well. They have wage caps. In the NFL, for instance, the weakest team gets the first pick of the draft. So they see football or sport as a sport first, a business second. It's been reversed. We now see football as a business first.
I'm not sure if I would say that with the American side of things because, I mean, there's no relegation.
It's different.
You know, in terms of competitive aspect, I think it's a lot more thrilling if you look at just English football as a whole and compare that to the NFL or whatever it is.
But over the concept of, like, you look at the MLS, it's a wage cap. You know, and they have a different system to us. They don't have this centuries-old thing that we do with a full pyramid of 90-odd teams. Well, it's more than that. It's 100-odd teams. That are all, you know, tied to locality. They never had that. So they developed something which is like, there's no relegation, there's no promotion, but what you have got is 16 teams or 20 teams that are pretty evenly matched. No team's ever won the NFL on 3 occasions on the trot. But you've seen it a few times in English football. Now City have taken it to the next level. They've won it. They could be winning it 5 times on the trot. It
Probably will
seems.
as well,
Although
let's be honest.
Rodri out is massive. Let's be honest. But yeah. So that you've got this philosophy. So what I'm saying is that the philosophy's changed. So it's now reversed. There's not this kind of fairness. It's all gone. It's very neoliberal. It's kind of business first. And we'll talk about how it changed. The key decades in the 1970s. So in 1970, oil was cheap. Unemployment was low. By 1980, oil is expensive. Unemployment is high. So I'm talking about the wider political landscape here. Everything changed in the 70s. Older listeners will remember like the winter of discontent, which was 1978. What you've got is a huge oil crash, a Middle Eastern oil crisis. It impacts this country massively. And what you get is this old kind of post-war Keynesianism, this socialist kind of ideal. It's out the window. It's all failed. We can't even run the economy. We're down to a 3-day week in the 70s. So what you've got is this switch. So Keynes is out. They get rid of this socialist model and in comes Thatcher in 1979. And it's about individualism. It's about big business. It's about privatisation. So this affects football. This wider political landscape massively affects football. People turn around and say, keep politics out of football. And you know what they mean. We want to watch a game of foot here. We don't want to be having to deal with all these wider issues. Just keep football simple. Yeah, I agree with that. But at the same time, football's really political. Its governance is political. It's incredibly political.
I mean, everything. Politics always gets dragged. I mean, look at Black Lives Matter, for example, taking the knee during COVID.
Really.
I think some people still do it, don't they?
They do every now and again. They used to do it every game. And people are getting frustrated. And then suddenly it's not football anymore. And then it becomes this wider issue. But what I'm talking about is the governance of English football. It's very political, but it's becoming visible to us. And what I'm trying to do now is make it visible. So what you've got is a switch from collectivism to individualism in the wider kind of, political landscape.
Yeah.
This affects football too. Privatisation, deregulation is part of neoliberalism. So the key year in English football is 1983. People think 1992, that's the hinge point where the Premier League starts. But that doesn't happen in a vacuum. It takes 10 years, 15 years for that to materialise. In the late 70s, you've got advertising coming in. So now we're seeing the commercialisation. In 1983, why is it so significant? It's the first year that Rule 34 is bypassed. So this rule that protected football clubs. Irving Scholar was the man that did it. He was chairman at Spurs before Sugar. So he wrote to the FA, he said, I want to take money out of football, And there's a reason why 1983 is so significant. Again, and we'll come to that. But the FA didn't respond. They just went, So he just went ahead with the commercialisation agenda. So this is how he did it. You couldn't take money out of football clubs. Rule 34 prevented you. So he set up a holding company. The holding company is tethered to the parent company. The parent company was Spurs. So the money goes from the parent company into the holding company. It hadn't left Spurs, but guess who owns the holding company?
And then he could withdraw the
so
money.
So that's how they got around it, yeah. The reason I think that 1983 is the right time is because you've got broadcasting. So for the first time, you've got regular broadcasting every week. You've got a duopoly, BBC, ITV. They're now vying for contracts. You've got money coming into the game. And then again, the advertisers, hold on, we're on TV. Let's get some sponsorship involved. So this shows how broadcasting, how technology changes football. Still does now. It impacts football massively, technological advancements. So 1983, you've got this individualism coming. That's the first year that the gate receipts sharing, we talked about it earlier, that was scrapped in 1983. So teams no longer shared gate receipts. So you've got this sense of individualism coming. Then you've got what happens in the Heysel disaster and stuff like that, and were banned from Europe. You've got hooliganism coming in. English football's at a low point in the 80s. People are disengaging with it, despite the fact that we were the best in Europe from 77 to 83. The standard was good. But
when did we get banned from Europe?
1985, I think it was.
Yeah,
with the Heysel. The FA banned English teams. Thatcher said, we've got to get this cleaned up, home and abroad. The FA banned. The FA made the decision. It wasn't Europe that made the decision. It was the FA. Self-imposed ban. And then you've got Hillsborough in 1989. Massive. Changed everything. You've got a report after it that said, listen, we've got to go all-seater. Who's going to pay for that? Well, the Labour opposition argued that it should be the pools. Do you remember that there was a form of gambling called the football pools? It was raising £250 million a year at the time. So we're talking.
I'd never heard of it, to be
Yeah,
honest.
you
with
won't have. You're too young. But pools, I can remember. It was a bit like the lottery, football
Okay,
pools.
okay.
Older listeners will know. But the Tory government said no. Football clubs can fund this themselves through new broadcasting deals. So the Premier League's been forged in the perfect storm. 1990 World Cup hits. I still remember it. I was 8, and you get England get to the semis. It's great. It's the 1990 World Cup. It changes English football. Suddenly, it's not this really bad thing anymore. It's this emotional thing. You know, the 1990 people are hooked, and 25 million, I think, tuned in to that semi-final. Murdoch's watching this, and he sees, hold on, this is a huge opportunity, English football. Berlusconi is the pioneer. Berlusconi was doing it in Serie A from 1980. So he's broadcasting.
Just so everyone knows who Berlusconi is.
A madman Italian, yeah. He bought AC Milan in the mid-80s. He was Prime Minister of Italy. Not a great one, but yeah, I suppose it's an opinion, isn't it? But Berlusconi is the pioneer for the broadcasting. Murdoch's following that example. You might remember, some people remember, you know, in the early 90s, Italian football was the best league. And you had, you know, Gaza went off after the World Cup to go play for Lazio.
Zola,
yeah. So, Italian football was beamed into English TV sets. That kind of predates the Premier League, just. And then Murdoch's in loads of debt. He's in billions of debt doing his Sky Cinemas service. No one's buying it. So he takes a punt on English football. And the Monopoly Commission, you can't get that monopoly. You're not allowed. So the Labour opposition, again, it's Neil Kinnock. He was the Labour leader at that time. He's threatened to take Murdoch to the Monopoly Commission. You can't do this. So the Tories say, listen, help us out and we'll get you in. So Murdoch's got this newspaper empire. He gets massively behind the Tories and they win a surprise election in 92, all because of Murdoch. He gets them in and they give him the protection, the political protection to set up the Premier League. Oh, wow. So, yeah, the papers went for, because Labour were due a landslide.
I'll be real, like, do you know, I feel like I should know this stuff.
No one
knows
knows
a lot of it is almost foreign to me.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it, I'm going, well, how was the Premier League actually set up?
Adrian Tempen is good for this. David Corn, Adrian Tempen, these are great journalists who kind of explain this in more detail. But that's the basics of how the Premier League was set up. And what you've got in 92, 93 is 60 million, just over 60 million goes to the Premier League. But it doesn't go to the big team. It doesn't go to the 24 teams it was then. It's not spread evenly. It goes to the biggest clubs. It was the big 5 then. So it was Everton, Liverpool, Man United,
Chelsea,
Arsenal,
go on, say it,
and Spurs.
Fucking
I
hell.
know you weren't in, but you know Everton were involved in this, and now it's the big 6. You have got Chelsea involved. Well, you could say the big 7 potentially with Newcastle being owned by
Aston Villa as well. They've got some money behind them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's all foreign billionaires, of course. What you've got is Murdoch put 60 million, 63 million, I think it is, something like that, into the top division, but it's not shared evenly amongst the 24 teams. It goes to the bigger clubs. So what you've got is the bigger clubs wanting more for themselves, you know. And, you know, we fast forward 30 years, that 60 million is now over 3 billion. That's a 5,000% increase. So what's happening now in terms of monopolization is the gap between the best and the rest is getting wider and wider and wider.
Just to stop there for a minute. I mean, we talk about all this money being pumped in, right? Not distributed equally.
No.
But could you not make an argument? And the Premier League's massive now, yeah? But isn't part of that because of the fact that clubs, you have Man United, you have Chelsea, you have City right now as well, who, yeah, it's not fair, but they have the money, they have the best players. Those are the teams people want to watch. And if that didn't happen, if Roman Abramovich didn't buy Chelsea, if you know, if the Qataris never got involved in football, whatever it is, or if the Saudis never bought Newcastle, you know, it would be a totally different landscape. And maybe, like you said, Italy and Serie A would still be the dominant force in football. So as much as I completely understand what you're saying, we might not be in a position as fans who might want to take control of a club to have the leverage of the broadcaster deals and the sponsorships, etc., if we weren't in this position in the first place.
I think it's a good argument, and it's difficult. It's difficult to say otherwise, what would have happened, we don't know. Maybe if we'd have not had these billionaires come in, they would have gone somewhere else. So maybe set up in France, Holland, or one of the other big kind of European countries and done the Premier League elsewhere. Yeah, that's possible. But and that kind of asks a bigger question about UEFA. Why are you allowing the oil industry to impact football? It's ridiculous. We don't need this, but that's a wider discussion about UEFA and FIFA not having protective regulations.
It's all money, though. That's all it is. The more money that comes in, the better for everyone. Everyone's getting paid,
yeah,
right?
But
so they're not going to say no.
There's a different way to do this. And what I'm going to suggest is actually, there's a real opportunity here. That what you've just talked about is the fact that the Premier League is a global brand. This is a huge opportunity. English football is the best league, the biggest league in the most popular sport in the world. And this is a huge opportunity. We can take it. We can take that brand. And there's a way of increasing the money as well. But we'll start with broadcasting, actually. Before I go into how we're going to politically take the football clubs, I'll describe the process. Think big, think long term. But let's just talk about broadcasting. There's a different way to do it. It's already been floated, this idea. And Nick Harris is a good journalist for this. At the minute, this is how it works. Premier League sells the TV rights to the rest of the world. And they buy up the TV rights in their particular region. And they market the product and sell it to their customer base. There's a different way of doing it. 200 million people currently pay upwards of £30 a month to watch Premier League football. So you do it from a single digital source. The digital age, we talked about technology, and they need to bring broadcasting into the 21st century. You could do it from a single platform.
Like
digital,
streaming.
Exactly. Amazon are already doing it, and it's brilliant. It works really well. MLS are doing it with Apple.
Yes.
So this is the model I'm suggesting is already in operation. If you do it from a single source and you charge those 200 million people £10 a month, that's £24 billion a year. And here's a great opportunity.
And how much does the Premier League currently generate?
We just wages are about £3.5 billion.
Right.
So we're basically looking at not much in comparison. So Britain's got no digital tech infrastructure either. So basically everything we have is American, Amazon web servers and stuff like that. So what a great opportunity. Let's set up our own digital tech, British owned by paying subscribers, us, and we'll create this digital broadcasting service and we'll stream Premier League football to the entire world, take our brand and we'll promote it to the rest of the world. And if it's only £10 a month and you can't hack it as easily because it's only one single source, so you won't be able to just hack it and stream it like you can now illegally. Not as easy anyway. Surely more people could join. We've got 500 or 600 million people around there watching big games. That's our customer base. If you can get 500 million people around the world to pay somewhere in the region of £10 a month, you're looking at £60 billion a year. And how do you take the broadcasting? It's really easy. You wait till the contract cycle ends. You get it for free. You've just got to think big and you've got to think above the FA, the Premier League. We're going to kick them out politically. How about this as well before we move into the political model? It's such an obvious thing. Why? Because what I'm talking about here is setting up a corporation that we own. What about a public gambling company?
But it sounds great. It sounds great. Who takes the lead on this? It's great. It's a fantastic idea. I mean, it's actually quite simple from what you're saying.
Yeah, it is quite simple.
But the reality is going to be far, far different.
Yeah, well, we're not ready to win, but we're ready to begin. In 2025, the fight back will begin. It'll be a small band of radicals at first. I'm not looking for followers. I'm looking for leaders. That's how it works. I mean, we've got our own club fan bases. We're an interconnected network. Celebrity influencers will be massive here in persuading the British football fandom to go, actually, if we stand up and fight for this, we could be in charge of tens of billions of pounds. And it's ours. I mean, new investments being made into areas. You don't get a say what gets built around here. Why? There's no democracy in English football. We can see that democracy of our wider political landscape, it's screwed up as well. It's just the same. The Labour and Conservatives, it's two sides of the same coin. I mean, they're taking backhanders all over the place, from very powerful lobbyists, really, We've got a chance here to fight back against our own government and use football as the arena. When you're fighting a big battle against a bigger enemy, what you've got to do is find a small place where you can't be outflanked. Football is that small place. We can take this. How do you get rid of the owners? That's the thing. That's the big question. We'll get this.
Chelsea fans are listening very intently.
Do you know what? This is how you do it. First of all, we'll talk about Brexit. I'm not here to say about Brexit, good or bad. You know, that's a wider debate. I know that London probably voted in, didn't they? A lot of Chelsea fans might have voted in. You know, it's split down the middle, to be fair. Brexit's advantageous for this. Inside the European Union, what I'm about to suggest isn't possible because club owners could appeal to the European courts. We're outside that now. All that red tape's gone. If Brexit is about British sovereignty, if Brexit is about kicking out the unelected foreigners, that's exactly what we're going to do.
So you're saying because of Brexit, we have the power.
We have an opportunity.
We have an opportunity. If we were in a position to actually take over a club and let's just say whoever the owners were, they wanted to take legal action via European courts, they can't do that now because of Brexit.
The only thing they can do is appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. Now, people are talking about leaving that for migrants, but it also protects the rich as well. So it protects property. So, but there is a way. You can nationalise. That's what we're going to do. We're going to nationalise football, but the state will not own football. We will. There's a new form of public ownership called a public commons partnership. I'll explain that in a second. But this is how you get rid of the owners. It's a really simple principle, and it works legally. You can remove people's property. You've got to do it, A, in accordance with the law, and B, you've got to compensate them. And they're the two specifications for the European Court of Human Rights. And it's got to be done in the public interest.
Right.
So it is in the public interest. And there's a wide margin, this is a legal term, a wide margin of appreciation for the state deciding what the public interest is. Yes, we need to set up a political party, put pressure on. You know HS2, train line from London to Birmingham, yeah?
Yeah, that's fallen through, hasn't it?
Well, it's going to Birmingham. It's fallen through for the rest of the country, yeah. It's very London-centric, a lot of what goes on in this country. But the idea is this. If you're in the way of that, your house gets taken off you. You don't have a choice. You can remove someone's property. You've got to do it through acts of parliament. This is the only way to do it. We're going to go in with an act of parliament and say, all football clubs, I'm talking all of them, every single one, come in to a public commons partnership. You turn them into it via acts of parliament. Every single club in England is worth less than track and trace. If you get them at the lower end, it's about the same as the Elizabeth line. Football, and this is the opportunity, is incredibly cheap at state level. Track and trace was 37 billion. HS2, 70 billion. Every single football club, top end is 30 billion.
So we're not even, right, so we're looking at the whole landscape
Everything,
of English football. We're going right down to the Conference League, National League,
every
whatever
single
it is.
one, yeah.
And you're saying that rather than buying clubs individually, so
All
Chelsea fans, right, we're going to buy it off Clear Lake.
No.
We're just going to, the money that Chelsea fans or United fans or whatever it is, all these big fan bases almost compensates for the lower teams that don't have the fan bases capable of putting up, God knows how much cash.
Well, at the same time, the top six costs about 20 odd billion combined.
What, face value?
yeah. So we're paying for you. We're going to use the state as a lever. We're going to use the state to buy football for us. This is perfectly legally possible. There's nothing they can do. They have their property taken off them. They can argue all they want. There's no European court to go to. You just get given, here is what your club is worth. Here you go.
It's like Abramovich, basically. You get kicked out.
You get kicked out. Yes, there's powerful lobbying groups in the way of this. Of course there is. There's the oil industry. But we're not talking about the wider economy. All we're doing is we're ring-fencing the football sector. It's tiny. It's a tiny bit of the economy, worth hardly anything. We're going to ring-fence that, we're going to attack it, and we're going to take it. And then we're going to pay back the money. Broadcasting, a public gambling company. All the things we do at football. What about a public brewery system? What about shirt manufacturing? Kick them all out. Nike, Adidas. They're not buying Chelsea tops because they support Nike. We can manufacture that on home soil. And we can manufacture it away as well in Asia.
That still brings in money, so doesn't that all contribute? I mean, I understand the owners.
There's loads of money being made in English football, and none of it's going to England. None of it's going to us. We're being ripped off.
So there's
loads of people with fingers in the pie.
Should be made in England by British, which is actually a very fair point.
Well, we've got no manufacturing in this country. We've got a big trade deficit. We import more than we export. However, to keep this kind of like, prices down, you'd have to go abroad and do some in Asia. But that gives you political leverage. Do you want 5 factories? That's 10,000 jobs, mate. We own the rights to everything. And we do it through a public commons partnership.
Yeah.
Now, a public commons partnership is owned about 10% by the state, where you can define it, and it's owned 90% by us. So we're democratising football here. Yeah, we won't have fan ownership in terms of fans run the club, because that would be too chaotic. But you can have it in terms of like they're liable to us. We're creating basically a huge corporation that will encompass a broadcasting company worldwide. You've got a brewery system. We can sell our products. When we own the broadcasting, we own the advertising rights. We can sell stuff to the rest of the world here. It's a bit like the East India Company, a huge private organisation that's kind of merged with the state. Except the East India Company was a bit oppressive, to go into that. We're not going to be oppressive. We're going to be bringing our game, our products, our cultural heritage, owning it and selling it to the rest of the world. Owning it together. We can ring fence the football sector, build the movement and attack, go on the front foot. That's what English football fans aren't doing. We're all on the back foot.
I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from with the ownerships and the fact that, let's just say you had however many fans, you could raise billions and billions. You're not going to struggle to run one football club, but if everyone comes together...
You get this right, Alex. What your point there, I'm going to add to it. Chelsea are a huge worldwide fan base. What we're going to do as well is we're going to give away 10% ownership rights to foreigners. So we're not excluding them, we're going to bring them in. Man United have got 650 million fans around the world. Charge them £1 a month. £1 a month for 10%. That's £6 billion a year just into Manchester. Chelsea could probably get 100 million fans. I don't know. I don't know the figures. But the idea is this. We're going to sell our products. We're going to try and get, to the rest of the world, basically. It's a totally new ownership structure, a totally new political structure.
Oh, it is. It is.
It's completely radical. But what's going on in this country? Do you want to just keep saying... this country's owned by foreigners. It literally is. I'm not being jingoistic here. It literally is. Look at Thames Water in the southeast. It's owned by a load of people who don't live here. They're in £15 billion of debt. And they've been that... they've took the piss, basically. We've got £18 billion worth of repairs to make. That's over 30 billion. Just that one water company for one region of the country, that costs more than our football clubs. This is politically achievable.
Well, there is
it's economically viable.
A lot of investment from abroad, and the reason for that, especially in football, is you put in £1, you want to get £2 back. And I think everyone's in agreement with that. I think there are certainly exceptions. I mean, Abramovich was a great one, right? I mean, he wrote off, £1.5 billion.
Oh, yeah, you don't need to have debt. You need to control the market. You don't need debt. My idea is this, put a wage cap on, and it's straight away. But you're thinking, well, if you do that, all the players will go elsewhere. But there's 2 ways around this. First of all, keep the wage bill incredibly high. So up the wages from what they are now. Second of all, a designated player rule. A lot of the regulation I've imported it from the US. It's American. This is what the Americans do. They signed Beckham. Do you remember LA Galaxy in 2007? Yeah. They created this piece of regulation to sign him, a designated player, because they have a wage cap. So you can sign 3 players outside the desert. So if you have a wage, you could be 5 players. You have a general wage cap of, let's say, I've got it about 275 million for each club, which is incredibly high.
That's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, but you up the wages. We need world-class players, but then you sign 3 players outside it. You have a limit on your squad, limit it to 30 or 33 players, or maybe 35. But what Chelsea are doing is that, they've got ridiculous amounts buying everybody, and then if some of them come off, they end up in the first team. But the way you're doing it, it's just not working, is it? Really, it's not fair either on everybody else. It's not fair on a lot of the players. So if we just keep squad size, everyone is basically fighting wages, from the same. And then you've got your local lads as well, but you've also got these incredibly high wages. And then Chelsea can actually fight you can win on your own terms. And you can lose on your own terms. And if you are losing, I can tell you now, I bet the Chelsea fan base is the same as every fan base. You're all turning on each other, being negative, slagging everyone off all the time. There's a lot of humiliation. And if things are going wrong, guess whose fault it is? It's your fault. And that's a better way of looking at it.
We're 4th. Give me a
Yeah,
break.
you're doing all right.
We're all right.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are looking all right. Well, better than you were. But I think the
yeah.
expectation levels there are now
It's
for
gotta
Chelsea
be higher.
fans. Yeah,
Absolutely.
You want to win the league now. You've had that taste and you want it back.
So what you're saying, just to sort of recap, and I know there's more that we're getting into as well. So we've had the structure of English football completely stripped from what it was, and because it became privatized, now, well, it is all about money. I think we can all agree on that.
Definitely.
And fans are having to suffer because of that, because of the money that we're pouring in and not getting anything back from
We're
it.
not pouring it in. Important. It's not been. There's no English investment. There's no British investment.
Ticket prices.
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, how much is a Chelsea shirt? It's more than 100 quid, mate.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
But I mean, like in terms of that, yeah, we are paying. We're locked out of our own stadiums here. We're paying excessive amounts. But I'm talking about the people who own the clubs. They're not. What I'm suggesting is really simple. Britain invests in Britain. We invest in ourselves. I mean, all this FDI, which is foreign direct investment, it's good, but it's also there's another side to it as well. If you allow too much foreign direct investment without doing your own domestic investment into yourselves and into your own infrastructure, what you end up is a country that is owned by multinational corporations that aren't based here. We can't tax the American corporations; they won't let us do it because and they have so much leverage. And what I'm saying is this. Yeah, we can have some foreign direct investment, of course, but let's have a bit of a British investment as well in ourselves, so we can actually compete in our own domestic markets with these. The whole world's been kind of like taken by these abstract concepts of markets. You look at Liz Truss; she got the sack from the markets. We're not in control of our own country, and this is the same for a lot of other countries. It's all this globalized neoliberal system. And what I'm saying is, actually, we've got a little weak point in the system here, and it's football. We can take it and trial something new.
I mean, the nice thing about it as well is if Chelsea fans, especially fans based around London, that money hopefully gets reinvested back into the community.
Exactly. And my thing is this: let's democratise it. I can't say how you're going to spend it. The idea would be you would decide. You come together. Football clubs bridge communities. And I think we need more of people getting together and having actual power. I'm handing Chelsea fans power. That's what I'm saying. Take it. Let's go. And of course, it feels impossible, but it isn't impossible. There's a great quote in there, actually, from a guy called Arthur C. Clarke. And I'm paraphrasing here. But he says, in any new idea or revolution in arts, politics, science, or whatever, it evokes 3 stages of reaction. And the first stage is this. It's impossible. Don't waste my time. Stage number 2, it's possible, but it'll never work. Stage number 3, I told you it was a good idea. So, and that's what I'm working on. It feels impossible. It's not. And if you're in any way thinking, this sounds rational. Yeah, it's a big idea. That's exactly what we need, Alex. We need big ideas. The country, it feels like it's going down the pan. And in so many ways it is. And we need something new. And, I'm traveling the country trying to wake us up.
Well, I tell you, I don't want to get too political.
We're too late.
Yeah, but I mean, just on a football front as well, I think it would be so nice for Chelsea fans to really feel that connection with their club. Because someone like myself, I've lived abroad. I've lived in Spain. Part of my family live abroad because of what's going on in the UK. And one of the things that will keep me in England for a long time is I love Chelsea.
Yeah.
And if I am a part of that, and I want to get into the democratic process of actually when fans are running the clubs, because we haven't even spoken about that.
Yes.
I would love the idea of having a say of, okay, do I have a say on the transfer policy? How do we allocate our budgets? What are we doing with our stadiums?
Hard power. You need respect. You need your voice to be heard. And that we're so humiliated. We have nothing. We have no power. We're serfs. That's what we are. And it's time to stand up and go, we don't need to be serfs. We can be active supporters. We can be members of our clubs. Our clubs belong to us. And not just us, but also, the rest of the world as well. But we've got to nurture our cultural heritage. Because what's happening is that we're becoming commercialised. We're becoming bitter and reactive. Only winners matter in this world now. And that's not what football was. football, maybe the world's changed, but let's change. We've got the power to change this. And you know what? We mentioned Germany. You mentioned it earlier about democracy. And when you talk about private investment, so the German model is 51-49, 50 plus one, they call it. So the Germans have control of their clubs and that means that private investment is limited, because if I'm an investor, I want control, and they never have control. They can always be outvoted. Now, that means that German footballers are paid a lot less than English footballers.
But they still, I wouldn't say...
They fight for it. They don't want to give it up. But what does that tell you? Democracy is important.
Yeah,
it's empowering.
But I mean, if they want to sign Harry Kane, for example, do they have a vote on that? Is that what you're saying? Or
no,
I don't think that's how it works.
The idea is this. Hearts up in Scotland, they're now fan-owned, okay? And their mantra is this, that Hearts will be fan-owned but not fan-run. So basically, in the end...
Someone's elected to run.
Yes, and democracy does cause problems. This is not without bumps in the road. Democracy is problematic. So how democratic do you want your club to be? You could turn around and go, right, we're picking team. And literally you could decide that, but it would be so chaotic. Or you could turn around and say, actually, we're going to give you 5 years. Or if you've got someone that's doing it really well, you just give them, let them get on with it. But the idea is that every club looks inwards, every club looks after itself, every club has got money, there's no debt at all. And the concept of debt in football is ridiculous. We've normalised so much stuff that we shouldn't have normalised. In that book, the first part talks about, the conditions suffered by English football supporters, and then the second part is this radical kind of new theory about how we can turn football into a public service, a highly profitable one, without any taxpayers' money, which is an incredible opportunity. And the third bit, I just saw you flicking, is a look at us. Who have we become? And that's an interesting debate, because no one's having it. No one's talking about who we are. And yeah, of course, we're a wide kind of diverse group of people, in terms of English football supporters, I suppose, are the same as the English population. But in terms of how we relate to football, I think that we're missing a trick here. This is not a commercial product on its own. It's also a spiritual thing. This is generations. Your Chelsea club has been handed down through your family.
Well, there's traditions.
Traditions.
That stay throughout.
And we're throwing it away, Alex.
Well,
we're throwing it away.
You make that point as well. I don't know who goes to the bridge now, Stamford Bridge, but I swear they've changed some of the songs that they play. I mean,
it's a very Americanized thing. We're being Americanized, mate.
They play "Don't Worry About a Thing," the drum and bass version, Bob Marley.
Right.
Ever since Crystal Palace, we got that chant going, and now they think, right, this is going to be Chelsea's new song.
Yeah. Who's making those decisions, though?
Well, it's not
execs.
It's not locals.
No, exactly.
I know that. Yeah, definitely. Exactly. And I think that is an aspect which, and there is Daniel Finkelstein, for example. He's on the board of Chelsea. He's a big Chelsea fan.
Yeah.
They are. I think that we are probably actually in a better position than other clubs to say, as a fan, how involved are we as fans? Because I do think that actually Bowley and Clearlake, I think they listen.
I think he's trying his best.
Yeah.
He's spent a hell of a lot of money. But you know what? He's an outsider. He's an American. He doesn't get it.
That's the problem.
He doesn't. They never will. But we are being so changed, Alex. I'm talking about, let's talk about 10, 20 years' time. Where are we going to be then?
How much a ticket's going to cost? I mean,
are there any Chelsea fans left? Are we all sat in boxes? Because they prefer that. Because it's more
19
money.
Out of the 20 Premier League teams, the only team that didn't raise their ticket prices was Crystal Palace. And guess what? It's fan owned.
Yeah.
Steve Parrish, a big Crystal Palace fan.
Yeah, he is, and they're more community led than probably any Premier League team. When you see it, and guess what? They've got a bit of a bloody atmosphere. They've got them. You see, it's a small stadium. It's an old-fashioned stadium. You're close to the pitch as well, which is a thing we've lost. We've been moved further and further away from the pitch as advertising comes in. And do you know what? I mean, I'm talking about the Spurs. I know I'm off on a tangent here. We're talking about Palace, but went down to the Spurs thing. Got chatting with, because my mate gets the corporates. Yeah, got chatting to a Spurs fan. He works in the city. Wealthy man. He's there with his son. He had to buy 3. He couldn't get a season ticket because despite all these seats, they limit it. So he had to buy a corporate ticket. Him and his son, he had to pay 3 seasons up front, 24 grand.
Oh,
I mean, that's what it is now. It was it's
Why
four
3
4
seasons?
grand.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, I know. He had to pay 3 seasons up front for him and his son because he wanted a season ticket. They went, well, no. So that was the deal. He had to fork out 24 grand to watch his local team.
Imagine paying 24
That's where we
grand
are.
to watch Tottenham. Sorry, I just had to.
Well, let's get a dig in where we
there.
can. Do you know what though? This thing we've got, this local rivalry, it's great. But also on the other side of the coin, we're all part of the same thing. We all suffer the same lived experience here. And what I'm trying to do is wake people up and say, English football in fandom, English football in culture is special and it's radically changing. And I think we go back to the past, take the best elements of that and move it forward into the future. That's basically what I'm saying. And it's a big idea. But I mean, if you've got any interest in this, please order the book because we need as many pre-orders as we can get. It's called Football, the People's Shame, How to Revolutionise a National Sport. The theory is sound. I've worked on it for 3 years. I've used a lot of... luckily, I got a publishing deal. So I've had access to political experts, loads of journalists. It's all...
Well, you're very informed, Mickey. I will
Yeah,
give
I've
you that.
worked really
and I
hard
feel
on it,
like...
mate. I mean, my job is that I'm a comedian and I'm a primary school teacher. So, you know...
Totally different.
I've got 2 young kids.
Yeah.
So I've been doing, you know... I've put a lot into this, and now I'm ready to. It's ready, and let's go. I'm trying to, like I say, wake us up because the theory works, and maybe it's a 10-year project, but this can be done by 2029. Maybe it's a 20-year project because that ESL is happening. And you look at the monopolization process, actually, you know, we've not talked much about it, but the gap between the best and the rest, I've said that phrase before, it's accelerating.
That's probably the only thing that might hold some fan bases, Chelsea included, from wanting to go with this model, because actually, I don't mind winning every week.
You're totally right. I was at Man United last week, and they're the same. Listen, we want to protect our... And I suppose, really, I'm turning around and saying, okay, let go of that a little bit. That it really is the underlying thing I'm probably saying. Let go of it a little bit. You will still be seeing an advantage because you've got the designated player rule, you've got the most money. But that advantage shouldn't be that it's the same 6 teams winning it. You know, Leicester can't really happen again. You know, the points tallies are ridiculous now for Premier League. No one's ever done this research. I had to do it myself, which just shows a failure of journalism. No one's looking at the bigger picture. I just looked at points tallies. First 10 years of the Premier League, you win it on 80. Second 10 years, 87. Third 10 years, it goes up to 91. We're in the 4th decade now. But the anomaly is Leicester. It's the only anomaly. For some reason, they won it on 81 points in 15-16. Now, when you take the 7 seasons after Leicester's victory, it goes up to 95. And there's only
City hit 100.
Yes, they did. Liverpool finished second on 97. I mean, this is ridiculous. There's only 114 points. If you have a 5-game run where you win 1 and lose 1 and draw 3, it's not even that bad a run. You've just dropped 9. You can't really afford to do that again. This is where we are now. Like Ipswich have come up, and you know they've just got no chance. Southampton. They have got no chance. The teams that come up go down. The teams that go down come up. This is the way it is now. Because the wage bills are so big in comparison to other wage bills. There's a team that are defying the odds, I think, as well, at Brighton. The way they sold a midfielder to you. I mean, got their money's worth. Yeah. But you know what? They're doing this model where they buy players that are on the up and then they sell them. But you can't keep doing that. There's going to come a time where they will struggle. Because whoever's making those decisions, Chelsea will come in for them. Man City will come in. You can't keep good players unless you're part of this global top 6. And Spurs are at the bottom of the ladder, actually, for the top 6. You go to Spurs. If you do well at Spurs, you go on again. Look at Gareth Bale. Harry Kane eventually had to leave because he wanted to win something. Then he went to Bayern Munich and made them not win after 10 years of winning. I mean, I love Harry Kane, you know. Great player. I hope he wins something this year. I'm sorry Chelsea fans don't see it the same way. But, you know, Chelsea, Spurs, it's not the final destination. The final destination really is, you know, your Reals, your Barças, maybe Bayern Munich in there, and also, you know, Liverpool, Man United, and then and Man City at the minute. But what's going to happen after Pep goes is Man City become the next Man United. You get this bitter legacy where you're not winning anymore. There's always the best manager in the world. Wherever he is, if you give the best manager in the world, the best players in the world, What do you think's going to happen?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I presume actually once this happens in English football, and there's already wage caps in Spain, for example, and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of regulations.
You've got to control the market.
But
It's sport, not the wider world.
yeah, I mean, but other countries will probably follow suit.
Yeah.
And you'll see not just in England with the Premier League, other leagues will take drastic action. And I would say England fans are very passionate. But, you know, look at Turkey, look at Italy, these countries as well. I mean, they're going to really kick up a fuss if things don't go their way. So
yeah, and you know what?
A lot of different angles.
When you listen to the Germans, you see real fandom.
And the Germans as well.
The Germans, you see, you know, their noise in their stadiums when the away fans come over here in European fixtures. It's like, wow, it's embarrassing listening to a Premier League fixture. It's embarrassing because we're not in there. We're not in the stadiums, and this is our game, and we should take it back.
100%. I'm with you there, man. Well, Micky, I mean, to be honest with you, first of all, thanks for the book.
Hey,
I really
pleasure,
appreciate it. And I mean, yeah, when I first spoke to you on the phone and you explained this, it's something. I mean, if you've watched for the whole podcast, I feel like you have to really get your head around it.
Yeah, it's a difficult concept to explain because it's so big.
It's massive. It's massive because I was under the illusion before we spoke in here. Maybe this is something that. Right, how can Chelsea fans take over? How can we dominate our own club? But in order for one club to do it, all of the clubs have to do it.
We go together.
So,
we unite. You put the club badges together and we actually become an unstoppable force. This can grow. And I'll stand by the idea, the claim I made, this is the greatest political idea of the 21st century. The more you think about it, the better it gets. And there's loads of things that have aligned. The stars have aligned. The idea of a new form of public ownership. This is not the state will not own football. We will. The idea of Brexit coming together, the monopolization process, the idea that the economic system in football is broken, and all the resentment towards not just the FA, the Premier League, but also UEFA. This is an opportunity to challenge the status quo. It's an opportunity to spread democracy, because you know this is at the minute it's authoritarian. It's pretty communist. Well, centralized power.
Also, if you look at it like this, and you know, for example, if we're really going to dig back into cultures, you know, fans are called different names. You know, you might speak to a Tottenham fan and call him Yido, or Chelsea fan, you're a rent boy. You know, fans are getting banned for life for this sort of stuff. And by the way, you shouldn't say a lot of the things, but I do think that because it's so commercial now and there's vested interest commercially, you're not really allowed to do anything. And of course, I don't condemn race. I condemn.
I know exactly what you mean, though.
Things.
We're having a laugh, yeah?
But
this is our thing. We've got to take control of this and decide what we want to do, because no one's ever informing us. What about VAR? We never get a say in that. We don't get a say in anything. And it's time for us to step up and go, this is our heritage, this is our cultural
There's also
tradition.
a part of me, and I'll be totally honest with you, Micky, like when we were at Brentford last season and we were chanting Bowley, you're a C word, part of me's like, what if I'm done on camera and the club decide to ban me or whatever it is? Because these things genuinely have happened at other clubs.
Yeah.
And it's not going to get any better, is it? Because gradually they're getting more power, we're getting a little bit less.
We talked about communism earlier. It's like the Stasi watching all the time. And online as well. And we should form our own social media company. Of course we should. We need digital tech in this country. Something that we can all decide on.
Yeah.
You know, we make the rules and we stick by them. I don't know what else to say, mate. We've got to take control, mate. Let's start. The fight back's going to begin. I can't say how well it's going to go because it's the future. I don't know, but all I can say is that I'm going to stand up.
I think this is one of those conversations that hopefully we come back to in however long, and then you see if there's been any progress there.
Absolutely.
And like any movement, it doesn't happen straight away, but
this is a seed. Yeah, seeds grow. So if you've got any interest in this, and I hope you have, get that book ordered and let's go. And you know, at Christmas time, you'll be reading a book and hiding from your family.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then next year, let's start organising.
And just to finish it off, I mean, if I gave you 1 minute and I said, please just summarise your philosophy on where we go and how we go about this in the most simple way possible, how would you explain it?
I suppose it's about looking at the wider world and saying, look, something's wrong here. We've got to change direction. And football is a spiritual thing as well as a commercial thing. Let's put the spirituality and the localness first. And then let's actually sell that product. Let's own it and sell it, because we've got a huge opportunity. Like I said, we can ring fence football. This is not the wider world. You target a specific and very small area of the economy, And I think people want this. I think people are waiting for it. I think people are waiting for some kind of change. And this isn't about hope. It's about belief. If you actually believe, if enough of us believe, we've already won.
Thank you so much, Micky. Always a pleasure.
Cheers, mate.